Welcome back YouTube, welcome to another video. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a DSG oil cooler setup. Now, I have previously already done a DSG oil cooler setup, a different one to start with. I then removed that and went back to an OEM style one. I've then, when I'm doing my other stuff with my Intercool Lock, which a video is coming now, I don't know if that'll be out yet or after this. I basically found a problem with my DSG, which I'm going to cover. Which I believe is related to temperature. So I'm going to cover all of that, and we'll also be covering my whole new setup with the way I'm going. So for a start off, I want to cover what I originally did. So when I originally built the engine, what I did was, let me get it. I did this type one. So this plate, I won't bring you over there, it's pretty self-explanatory. So if you look on your top of your DQ250, your O2E, DSG gearbox, and a lot of the other ones, they're very similar, the DQ500, DQ381, they have a heat exchanger that goes straight on the top. So basically there's two O-rings straight on top of the box, 3 bolts, this clamps down. Well, that's what the OEM one's like, same as this, and then obviously it has a new 2 coolant pipes off, so the coolant runs straight through the heat exchanger, and the oil comes from underneath, runs inside. But what that does is, not only does it help with the cooling when it's up to temperature, it helps get it up to temperature, because DSG fluid, unless you're driving it quite hard, it takes a while to warm up, because there's no heat. Like obviously a combustion engine warms up from the combustion. But with a gearbox, when it's sitting stationary, it doesn't really warm up, and you ideally want it to get to operating temperature faster. So that's the way the heat exchanger works. So as the coolant's going through it from your warm engine, they will warm the oil up, and then when you get up to your full operating temperature, when the oil goes above it, the coolant then helps to get it back down. Obviously they don't work, they work fine for OEM cars, or if you're giving it a little bit, but if you start drag racing or you're going like high power and you've got like uprated clutches and shit, then really you could do with a little bit more. It's not really enough. So for a start off, you can actually get bigger heat exchangers with more rows in than the stock one. I haven't tried that, so I can't comment on how well they do it. I'm sure they do work slightly better. Whether it's enough, I don't really know. But obviously, if you're going to track it, which I might take mine on track sometimes, I also drag mine sometimes, you ideally want something that's a step up from it. So when I built mine, I went for one of these style ones. So you take the heat exchanger off, you connect your hoses together or delete your hoses. It depends on your build. Every build is going to be different. But you basically remove the coolant pipe, so there's no longer coolant warming your oil up, which is one of the biggest cons, which I didn't think would be so much of a problem until it came to it, and I'll explain why. So I put this on. Obviously there was AN fittings that went on here, and then that went directly to my oil cooler. It was in a different place. It was down near the bottom. It's not there anymore. If you go back to one of our previous videos, you'll probably find where it was. It doesn't really matter. So it went straight to the oil cooler. Now the problem was, because I had the uprated clutch pack, or even if you've got a stock clutch pack, after I'd done everything, I then wanted to run basic settings. Now to run basic settings, the oil has to be up to a set temperature. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but it's quite high. You have to get it up to temperature, which is what it basically wants to be operating temperature, because it wants everything to be in spec at an operating temperature. So when you're trying to do that, obviously I was even driving it hard and stuff, and you don't really want to be driving it hard when it's not had its basic settings done. Really you want that done before you start driving around and moving, etc. So it's not really ideal. I ended up bringing it in, trying to get a heater on the oil cooler, trying to warm it up. It took me ages. I spent so much time trying to get it up to temperature, and then as soon as I got up to temperature, you start it, I can see the temperature coming straight back down. It was an absolute pain in the arse. So I ended up, it was just so much of a pain, and I started having like little leaks here and there, only like minor weeps, but they were still a bit annoying. So when I did some stuff on the car, I actually removed that. I went back to OEM, but what I did was a little auxiliary water pump. I actually wired it up, so I had the auxiliary water pump pumping water through it. When I went drag strip, the gearbox actually overheated like quite badly. Now, I don't know if, when I took it apart, I did find a slight kink in the hose where I tried to wrap it around. It was only a slight kink, it was enough for it to pass through. I don't know whether that what it was, or whether it was just the fact that the OEM oil cooler, the heat exchanger, sorry, couldn't handle it. So I don't know which one it was. It could have been the fact that I kinked a little bit. Either way, it got too hot. And when it gets too hot, it starts cutting the clutch out and gets a bit jerky. I mean, mine seems to, obviously being on Emu Black and having the uprated clutch pack and everything, mine always seems to drive better when it's cooler. It drives better when it's cooler, and when I'm really giving it something that gets really hot, especially at drag strip, it starts jerking and banging and stuff like that. So I knew the oil was getting too hot with the OEM style cooler. So when I've been doing everything else that I'm doing at the minute with the other intercooler setup, that's an ongoing video. I don't know which one's going to come out first, but when I've been doing that, I actually decided I was going to just do a gearbox oil change, and I was actually going to buy the K1 and K2 clutch solenoids just to change them, just for the sake of while I'm in there. So what I did was I actually took my drain. If you've ever done a DQ250 before, you take your main drain plug out, and then some will start coming out, and then you have a level tube in there that's plastic that's got an Allen key in the center. So you take that out, that's the level, then you take that out and it drains all the oil out. Now when I took it out, the end of it was broken. It broke some off the end. Now when I took it out, I didn't really think nothing of it. I just kind of thought, oh, that's weird, I haven't seen that before. Maybe it just broke when it came out, maybe it's got brittle. So I had another spare box here, because I've always had a spare box. Someone had one for sale for cheap, so I just bought a spare box. So I went to put the level tube from another box in. Now as I was putting it in, I could feel it hitting something. It wasn't going all the way up. That's when it started thinking, what's going on here? So we got a camera in there, got a light up, and basically you could see some that had moved over. At the time when it happened, we didn't know what we didn't know what it was. We had a rough idea what it was. So basically it turned out to be the park lock. So obviously on the DSG you've got park, so that's like a rod that comes in, but on the Diff there's almost like a castle type. It's almost like what you do on like a crank pickup or whatever, but it obviously that has actually slid down the Diff. What I'm doing now is I will take the camera over, we'll go have a look at it because I've still got it upstairs, and I'll show you exactly what's happened, and then we'll come back and I'll carry over the new style cooler. But what I will just finish up first is, one of the other problems with these ones is, not only does it not warm it up, it's under somewhat of high pressure. It's not the exact pressure that clutch sees, because it's not quite the same, but it is kind of still under it's part of the higher pressure circuit this system is. So that's why you can end up with leaks sometimes, and not only that, you're then making it travel a long distance with the oil pipes and the cooler. So I don't know how much of a problem that actually is, but I know that I've spoke to a few people, and it seems like motorsports companies do not use this type. At the time of me buying this, I didn't know, but from the research I've been doing and looking into it myself, it seems like these are not ideal. It's best to keep the normal heat exchanger one, so this high pressure circuit's got a smaller route, rather than adding all that extra oil and that extra distance in the high pressure. Some people say apparently you don't reach as much clamping pressure on your clutches. I don't know how true that is, because I haven't done no testing, but I did look into it, and it does seem to people do think that I mean, people say they've tested it. I don't know how true it is, but apparently because of it's going through the high pressure circuit and the distance and the extra capacitor, it can lower your clamping force a little bit. Don't know how true that is, but that paired with the main reason being the oil not warming up is the main reason that I've gone away from this, and I won't be using this anymore. We'll cover the new one in a minute, but first let's go have a look at this Diff and see what moved, and see why I've changed my box, because this is actually my spare box in now. My other box is upstairs, and I'll show you why now. Right, so here is my old box. I don't know how well you're going to see this. I don't want to shine too much light, but let me put this light down. So if you see down here, you see how you can see them splines. So essentially this part here, which is the park lock, this should have been all the way down there flush. So this is moved up, and I don't know how well you can see, but you're talking a good at least 5 mil at least. So this is basically moved up here, which is, I think, is due to heat, because this is splined onto here, but it's basically heated and pressed on. So they heat it up and then they press it on. There's nothing else that holds this on here, but it's also not under any strain at all. unless you was gonna like slam it into pot. But even then, the force would be in that direction. It would not be pushing it up. So this is under no force. There is no reason why this would move under here. The only thing I could think is when I overheated the box when I was at the drag strip, is that when it's been heated, it's just got that hot that it's expanded and it's just slid. That's the only reason I could think. I can't say for sure that is what the problem was, but that's the only thing I can think. And this is the damage being caused by it. Come around here, let me try and move that light a bit. So if you can see here, it's into the case, and it's also into the case here. So I don't know why you can see that step, but it's basically machined the case there. That's sharp now, and it's machined the case there. In reality, the case might have survived. It might have been all right, but we did also find something else, which I'll show you. But what we was originally going to do is we was going to heat this back up, press it back down, and then tack weld it so it can't move. But after seeing the machine in the case, and I already had a spare box, we decided to use that. One main reason we did that was, let me just move this out the way. Now, one of the problems that you see in a lot of the DSGs is the bearings can start moving in the case. Can't remember which one it was now. I think it was in the other side of the case. But basically, one of the bearings in one of the casings was spinning in the casing, and that can be a sign that once it starts spinning in the casing, they end up with playing them, and I think that's usually when they cock over and end up smashing the gears. So with that all being said, we basically just decided to use a spare box, and they're going to do the oil cooler setup. So now you've seen that, what I'll do is I'll go start talking about the oil cooler setup, and we'll start going over it, and then we'll work it out together basically. Right, for a start, let's cover the sump. So this is a OEM sump, but what we've got here is we've got two AN10 fittings. So but essentially this one's now going to be the feed, and then this one's going to be return. If you look on the other side, so it's fully welded all the way through, it's penetrated well. And then I've painted it. It's only rattle can, the powder coating oven isn't working at the minute, and I'm not really that bothered, you don't really see it, so it's kind of a bit OEM looking. But what's going to happen is, obviously inside the sump, this is not under pressure. So this is obviously basically like a reservoir where it takes the oil from before everything happens. So this is why it's ideal to take it from here, but obviously the only problem is you do need something to circulate it. So what we've got here, so this is what's going to do the job. This is a Mocal oil pump. See the flow direction. So essentially this will have AN fittings on it. You've got the AN fittings on there, and then I've got the oil cooler, which I'll show you in a minute. It is the same one I already had before, I've just changed it to a different place. So yeah, essentially it'll come out of this AN fitting, spin this round, this AN fitting down here, then it will flow, imagine it was that way around, it will then flow through the pump, it will then go through the oil cooler, and then it will drop back into here. So obviously the sump goes that way on, so this is the top, that's the bottom, so obviously this is where the oil is going to sit. I don't know exactly where it sits, but I would estimate inside the sump pan it's probably around this level, somewhere here. So it'll just be constantly taking oil out of here, going around the system, and then dropping back at the top. It's going to mean the quantity is a little bit higher, but that's not a problem. But yeah, this is the sump, the pump, and then what we'll do is we'll move over now. So my oil cooler now is here. I've fitted it in nicely. I mean, you can barely even see it, just kind of blends in. So I've got the Mishimoto rad here. These brackets from new intercooler setup, which is a video coming. Like I said, I don't know whether that's out yet or out soon, but you'll see this soon. That's what them brackets are for. This fitting is actually an AN8. This is one I was just trying just to see what distance I had, because the pipes are going to go behind the back of the intercooler. But this is just the one I had before. This is a 10 row just eBay oil cooler. I never had problems with it before. The heat exchanger is still going to be in place, which not only will warm it up, but also still cool it to a slight degree. So this is just like an extra thing. So essentially you're going to have AN10. I don't know whether it's going to come through here or down and round, I'm not too sure yet. I haven't worked that out. That will be later in the video. But yeah, the oil cooler's there. We've got the pump, we've got the sump. I've literally just got to all make it up, but obviously I want to do the intercooler and the other part, some of the other part work first before I see where I'm going to route it. But I just wanted to try and cover as much of this now before we start getting into the other stuff. But yeah, that's it at the minute. So the video will carry on when I get to the next bit where we do some lines up and maybe even see some testing of it. But yeah, for now, this is how it's looking, and it'll progress on in the video. So stay locked and we'll see how it turns out. Right, so the setup's pretty much done now. I didn't follow through as I made all the lines and stuff because there's loads of videos out there of how to make AN lines and do all the fittings and everything, so I'm not going to cover that. If you don't know how to do them, then just jump on YouTube, there's loads of other videos. So many, it's just not really worth doing it. The only thing I haven't done is wired up yet. I'm not going to cover this on the video, but I will talk through the multiple ways you can do it. So what I'll do, I'll cover that first. So obviously earth, just go to earth. On mine there is just one up here, so it's super easy to do. As for the power, I was originally going to run a relay, but after looking into it, looking on Mocal's website, finding the spec for this, it says that it doesn't say anything about running a relay, and it also says that the recommended fuse for it is only 7.5 amps. So something drawing 7.5 amp don't really need a relay. So I'm just going to run it straight. I'm going to put an inline fuse. I'm going to go up to the fuse box. At first, I'm just going to run this off ignition feed just to see how it works. The only reason I'm doing that is because I was going to run a temp sensor, but I feel like the DSG box probably goes from being kind of warm to really hot really fast, especially if you're doing launches and stuff. I have still got the heat exchanger in place so the coolant runs through it. So that'll kind of warm it up still. So I don't know if it'll matter that it runs all the time. I've looked at some of the other kits that other motorsports companies do, and none of them seem to have a different trigger. So obviously you can do a switch inside the car if you want to do a switch. You can do a temp sensor like I've got here. So this is a genuine Mocal one. They do it in 82 degrees or 88 degrees, that is Celsius, not Fahrenheit. So this one's at 88 degrees, it says 109, so 190 Fahrenheit. I'm not sure what the other one would be, it'd be a bit less. It's a 1/8 MPT thread. So you could either you could weld a fitting into the sump and do it there, or I have got one of them aluminium oil filter housings. That is actually got a 1/8 MPT there as well, so you could put it there. So there's a few different places you could put it if you wanted, and then it'd be triggered by temperature. The problem is I feel like once it's got to that temperature and it jumps up fast, then you got the pump needs to start circulating it, and you need to start getting air to the cooler at the same time. I feel like by that time that's happened, it's probably already peaked too high, so I was just going to leave mine on constant and just try it. If I find a problem with that, I will come back and go over it in a different video, but I don't think it will be a problem. The only other thing that Mocal do recommend, which I'm kind of not listening to, is that it says that you're meant to have it on a temp sensor or something like that, because the oil's meant to hit 70 degrees before it comes on. Which I believe is due to viscosity, but the thing is because this is actually listed as a gear oil pump, so you can use it for like your normal like diffs and like axles and stuff like that. But the thing is 75, 90 and stuff like that is quite a thick oil, and especially when it's cold it's really thick, and I think that's why it tells you to get it up to 70 degrees, where DSG fluid is actually not as thick, well nowhere near as thick as other gear oil. It's actually quite, not really thin, but it's a lot thinner oil. So with that being said, and we're not in a really cold climate, I don't think it'll be a problem. I mean, if you live somewhere where it's freezing cold, you might want to think about putting it on a stat or maybe even a switch and just like turn it on when it warms up a little bit. For stuff like basic settings, if you want it to warm up faster, what I'll do is I'll have like a bullet connector where it goes up near the fuse box. So you don't do basic settings and stuff very often. So if I want it to warm up fast and do basic settings, it'll be as easy as just pulling a bullet connector. I might actually put a bullet connector underneath the fuse box so it comes out a little bit. So if I ever need to warm it up a little bit or whatever, I can just unplug it there. I mean, I might put it on a switch at some point just so I have got the ability to turn it off, but it's a lot of wiring through the car for kind of not much gain for not very often. I always let it warm up well before I drive it anywhere, and what I use for driving it, I don't daily it all the time. I drive it sometimes and I take it drag race and stuff like that. So I don't feel like I really need it on the switch. I may change it at some point, but they are the different ways that you can wire it. yeah, other than that, I'll just bring you in close, take you over where I've got it. I have ran it up on using a jump pack because the car's not ready to run yet, so I can't cover it all running. But I have pumped in 7 litres of oil. I might need a little bit more. And then I ran this for a minute. I will show, after we've done the close-ups and that, I will show a clip of it running just so you can have a listen to it, and there's not really anything to see. But when I ran it, don't seem to have any leaks anywhere, which is a good thing. Next thing to cover is how I've mounted it. It does come with like rubber grommets, so you can have it in 4 places, so you can mount it with all 4. Where I've put it, it's just on 2, but it's solid enough, you can't pull it off. So it's on rubber just to stop vibration going through the body and stuff, because obviously metal on metal, it does vibrate a bit. So the way I've mounted it, I've actually riv nutted it. I use riv nuts a lot, especially when you're doing modified stuff. If you're going anywhere where there's metal, before I had my cooler up here where I showed you, it is now, I will show you again, but before I had it up here, my cooler was actually down here. I only moved it because obviously I'm doing this all new intercooler and part work, so it was down here, and when it was down, it was kind of in this area here. It was actually on my crash bar, so I riv nutted it again to the crash bar going up, and then so yeah, I use riv nuts quite a lot, but again, it's going to be each way you're going to do it's going to be different, so it's going to depend on where your car. You might not put the pump here, you can put the pump wherever you want, and the lines and everything, you've just got to make sure everything's going. Obviously you want to be, the pump flows that way, it's got an arrow on the top, so obviously ideally, again, it might not matter that much, but obviously you do really want to take from the bottom of the sump and go through the pump. It just makes most logical sense to get it going. Obviously it goes back in at the top. But yeah, that's how it's mounted. I've gone over the wiring, so let's just bring you in close. You can see where I put the lines, and then that'll be pretty much it for this video. Keep an eye out because the new intercooler setup video is coming out soon. So yeah, let's bring you in close and we'll cover it. Right, so here we are. What I'll do is I'll just follow the route from where it first takes it. So obviously there comes from the sump where I showed you before with the ANTN fittings that are welded on. Comes up on a 9-tear, goes around on this other 9-tear, goes into the pump. One thing I do want to cover, you do have to get special fittings for this Mocal pump. Yeah, they definitely see you coming. So basically, if you look here, it's got that little step bit on it. If you try to use these, you'll have to double check, but I think the 3/8 BSP. That's what the thread type is. When you try and use a normal one, you can get off like any kind of shop off eBay or whatever. The actual nut part hits the body, so it has to have this little step bit in. That's how they get you. So you have to buy these special Mocal fittings, which are stupidly expensive for what they are as well, which is a bit of a pain in the arse. But I mean, that's how these companies get you. So yeah, it comes through. We'll try and, don't know how well you can see, but there is an arrow on the top, so flow does go this way. So obviously it runs through the pump, comes down, round. It's kind of hard to see because I've got the sort of boost pipes there. There's still a few bits I need to finish off around this area, so you can't see it that well, but essentially that one comes up and it actually goes to this side. So just so I'll show you again, that is where the cooler is. It's in a good place because that's where there is like a vent on the top grill bit. Obviously you got the bottom bit down here with the intercooler, but then there is the top grill bit up here. So yeah, it'll come through, it comes up behind. These parts just run behind the intercooler, by the way, so obviously this one just sweeps up nicely like that, goes up to the cooler, runs through the cooler, and then comes back down on this fitting here, which comes down and round. This fitting actually comes down. Sorry, that other one is that one actually, and then this one comes round, it's this one. So that one comes under, round here like that, and comes up to that welded on AN10 fitting there. So that's just the complete system. But like I was saying about amperage and stuff, obviously this is pretty much just free flowing. The only pressure it's going to see is any kind of back pressure it gets from the cooler, because obviously the sump isn't pressurized, so it's just taken from like a reservoir, putting it round. So you've just got the pressure from running it through the lines. So I mean, this pump's not really made, it says on it, it's not made to make any pressure, it's just a circulation pump. But yeah, this way it'll just keep the oil in the sump cool, it'll just go round. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It's got the cooler. I mean, it's pretty simple. Once you've mounted everything up, it's pretty simple. I mean, like I said, the wiring's simple no matter which way you do it. AN lines, once you get the hang of them, AN lines are super easy to do. So it's just kind of working out where you're going to mount your pump, where you're going to mount your cooler, and then just make up your AN lines. Just make sure, I did have to move one around, just make sure if there's anything else you're doing, like boost pipes and stuff, make sure you do all them first. It's easier to, when you make an AN lines up, you can go round stuff, whereas your boost pipes can't. Actually did a boost pipe and then I had to reroute an AN line because it was actually pressing on it. So yeah, just make sure of little things like that. But other than that, it's pretty simple and straightforward. Like I said, I did run it and there doesn't seem to be any leaks. So yeah, I pretty much covered anything. What I'll do is I will put a clip in now of it running. Like I said, there's not a lot to see, but you can hear it running and you'll see that there's no leaks, etc. And then that'll be it for that video, but I'll move on to that clip now. Okay, so let's just turn on the jump pack just so you can see what it sounds like. You can feel it flowing through all the lines, even the return. You can also, you can kind of feel it returning to the sump. As well as that, we don't seem to have any leaks anywhere, which is a bonus. I don't know how loud it sounds on camera, but it's not too bad. There's a bit of noise, but that's to be expected really. So that is it. That's going to be it for this video. There will be another video coming out soon with my new intercooler setup. Pretty much just going to cover everything I've done with the new intercooler setup, etc. And then after that, I'll be getting it dialed in. We'll be back on road, and I'm going to try and get loads more videos. Going to try and get some more driving videos, maybe reaction videos and stuff like that. I feel like my videos are starting to get a bit dreary now, where I'm just waffling about all the time about doing this and that. I want to try and get some videos of the car. So I mean, you've just got the intercooler setup one next, covering that, and then after that it'll be back on dyno, get everything dialed in, and then it will be back on road. And then I'm going to be looking at doing maybe like a first drive video again after doing all these changes. Obviously my first drive video was before when I first did it, but we've changed an awful lot, so I'll probably do like a new first drive video. And then after that, I'm thinking about doing reaction video, maybe with like just people I know, friends and stuff like that, get them in a passenger seat, see their reactions, and do some outside videos and stuff as well. So yeah, I'm going to try and get more of the actual car actually driving and stuff, rather than just me showing here and there doing this and that, because after the intercooler set up and these few little odds and sods, fingers crossed I won't have to do anything for a little while again, unless I break something. I could break the box again, but we'll see. But yeah, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.